So, let's go and get into the questions. So, quick introduction. So, Christy Joyce Moreno is Bilingual Studio Editorial Director position at Hallmark, co-managing the cultural identity brands and other greeting product lines. Her work is directly tied to providing products and services to the cultural segments of the total market in the United States, not just Kansas City, total United States, and also executing product solutions for international markets. International, so that means, and you've traveled, right? Outside, that's cool. For work stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. You've been at Hallmark for nearly 7 years and also serving as an internal consultant for multicultural consumer products, needs, and services, marketing communications, and visual merchandising. Also actively involved in the work that Hallmark's Diversity and Inclusion Council carries through Hallmark's employee resource groups.
Right.
You've held marketing and communications, insights, ideas, marketing, communications, chair positions for the Asian American and Latinx employee groups, and currently vice chair for the Asian American Resource Group. These groups actively work on growing the business, enriching the community, and representing the marketplace through cultural, educational, and business events, activities, and projects. For 20 years, you've owned your language solution business, providing bilingual, Spanish and English, translation and interpreter services, as well as copywriting and editing. You've acquired experience in the fields of medicine, education, legal, and creative disciplines. Raised in Mexico City, lived in several parts of Mexico, Switzerland, and Turkey, single mother of 2 wonderful bilingual children who provide pride and light to your life. Your studies and background are in music, sociology, literature, and language interpretation. Over a decade now, Christy has engaged in advocacy work for low English proficiency families and refugees, and is also an advocate for the school choice and public charter school education, and also a Missouri delegate for the National Parents Union. Applause, please. All right, Courtney is joining us from, and you're in St. Louis, or are you in the suburb of St. Louis?
No, St. Louis City.
Okay, St. Louis City. All right, so Courtney Hernandez joins us from St. Louis and has over 20 years interpreting and translating experience, specializing in legal and court interpreting since 2013, when she became certified court interpreter. Courtney also has experience as a conference interpreter and works with interpreting agencies like LAMP. LAMP is Language Acts Multicultural People, and we had Angel here a little bit earlier. I think she just left. LAMP decreases linguistic and cultural barriers for limited English proficiency, deaf and hard of hearing individuals seeking healthcare, legal, education, and support services in the Midwest. Additionally, LAMP offers educational opportunities such as cultural diversity training, interpreter training, and language courses. LAMP is committed to providing medical facilities, educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, as well as civic and cultural institutions with exceptional language access support. Applause for Courtney. And Jose Pepe Torres. So Jose is a first-generation Hispanic Latino founder and CEO of Culture Journey, LLC, a consulting and training firm on DEI and language access. Today, Pepe, like their colleagues and friends like to call him, provides oversight for a portfolio of projects to establish processes and standard operating procedures for efficient and effective delivery of culture journey products and services. Identifies and integrates diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's the DEI, best practices into a business model, products, services, marketing, and approaches. Assesses DEI trends, issues, and opportunities to enhance business footprints that impact staff and community. Promotes educational agenda for linguistically and culturally diverse staff and community through the development and dissemination of language access curricula and assessment products and resources. Some of the current and former clients for Jose Pepe Torres through Culture Journey include the Family Conservancy, Wyandotte County Health Department, Mid-American Nazarene University, Western Colorado University, the Jackson County Mental Health Levy, Planned Parenthood of the Great Plains, Johnson County Mental Health Centers, DHS Portland, Oregon. Pepe has dedicated more than 15 years to promote social justice through his language access lens and cultural competency journey approach by empowering individuals and organizations to create awareness and change. Thank you, Pepe. All right, so question time. This is the exciting piece because I really want you guys to hear from all of our three panelists. So I'm going to start off with a very easy question for all three of you first. When we have grown up bilingual, people have said, if you grow up, you will make a lot of money. So my question is it true? So, Christy.
It is possible. It is possible, and I think it's not a yes or no answer. It really depends on how you're building your skill set, how confident and comfortable you are with your Spanish language, or your other language. But also, in my opinion, it is how you pursue that experience, how you sell yourself as a professional or as a bilingual. So I think it's just there are many answers to that. It does not guarantee, being bilingual does not guarantee that you will have, I don't think anything guarantees any like official success or success rate, but it is in how you strategize and how you plan your professional experience, your work experience, or your volunteering for that matter too. So, I mean, it really is about the opportunities you seek, the goals you pursue, and the fields that you are really interested in, applying your bilingualism into. So if it's just a money question, I would say, well, it is an opportunity if you find yourself being the one who is pursuing maybe a field where there are not a lot of bilinguals already competing for those positions or those jobs. So in my opinion, the answer is it is possible. It depends on you and the opportunities that you seek or create for yourself.
Courtney, can you answer that question for us? So, is it true that if we're bilingual, we'll make a lot of money?
No, it's not true. I agree with Christy. I think it's possible. I think being bilingual definitely opens a lot of doors for you that may not otherwise be opened. But it doesn't necessarily mean you'll make a lot of money. And for me personally, that's not the goal anyway. So it is very fulfilling.
Thank you. Bebe.
I agree with the two ladies. I would say how much you want it. And then in my experience being a first generation immigrant, my language was a niche. And the opportunities were there, and there were not enough bilinguals that the case itself presents, opportunity itself presents that I took it, right? And then you fly with it. But now that, as you see, it's a lot of competition. And in order to get higher, you need to get better. And it is possible, I can say about my case, I live in my American dream right now, okay? From an individual they didn't know how to speak English in the streets of Kansas 37 years ago, to having my own consulting firm and training interpreters for the healthcare arena. So it is possible, but it's not always the case. My two sons, my oldest sons, 30 and 27, they say they speak Spanish. They don't. They speak Spanglish. They can build careers in healthcare. No, they don't. They need to get better at it. But they need someone to tell them that because they truly believe they speak Spanish. So it's about the individual and the opportunity you seek to self, like the two ladies are talking about, and increase your skill set.
So I would say most of the people here in this room, with a show of hands, you grew up bilingual, having access. And did you hear that from parents or some other people saying you'll make a lot of money?
No, I never
No?
heard that.
No?
I mean,
You heard it when you got older?
yeah, I don't think saying that you're bilingual, like, I don't feel like the statement, if you're bilingual, you'll make a lot of money, is a common one. I have not heard, I mean, I know as an adult that it will definitely give me more opportunities.
Yeah.
And so I just have access to more things and access to more jobs.
Because, I think it's interesting, and I should have started off with this, but it was a couple of weeks ago where I was interpreting in a school. And it was a first grade teacher telling the parent, because the parent was saying, I don't know which language to practice reading in, right? Because I don't read the English, and the teacher said, keep it up, kid, because you're gonna make a lot of money when you grow older. And they even pointed to me as the interpreter saying, look, you can get her job. And I'm like, I don't think you know how much I'm making right now.
You're like, I'm volunteering.
I'm volunteering, I know, there is no money there. So, but anyway, I mentioned that because for a lot of and I've seen in my years' experience that I hear that that's what we're told when we're younger. You'll make some money. So, all right, Pepe. I know you have many years' experience in training bilinguals and interpreters to work in healthcare, in the healthcare system here in Kansas City. This training for an interpreter can include up to 40 hours or more of training material. If I were to complete that training, is it true that I can now call myself a certified interpreter?
No. Most programs like mine are introduction to medical interpreter profession. We have two national bodies that certify interpreters, CCHI and the National Board. Those are the official entities that can national certify medical interpreters. Any other program that portray themselves to certify interpreters, they're lying. They use it to a propaganda to create more people to come to their programs. And in my program, before you come in, we have to do an interview to clarify all these pieces. We do a smaller language assessment to make sure that you are up to par on the language skills, the basic language skills that you need to get into the program, right? Then it happens like we just spoke before. If I see that an individual has low skills on English or Spanish, that individual needs to think twice about thinking about finishing the program because we get into really technical medical terminology, and you need to make sure you know your stuff. And also, I'm not there to get your money or you to waste your time. Some people will need to wait 2 3 years before they get better. But I would say, surprisingly, more Caucasian individuals that go to college and get Spanish are joining the class. So, and it's something that about pride, about, we are the ones who speak Spanish and we're not taking care of our own Spanish. I told my kids that are going into college, I said, you need to take elective grammar Spanish. I already know Spanish. No, you don't. Right? And it's about those opportunities for that. But no, they cannot call themselves certified medical interpreters. It's a first step. The market is not helping. The demand is so much. There people are, right now, organizations, they just need proof that you really speak Spanish because they don't have HR checking on your Spanish because they don't have the employee base to do that, right? So they need some kind of paper that tells that you really speak Spanish so you can do the job correctly. And demand is not helping, but it's turning around real quick right now.
Okay, so just to clarify, trainings for interpreters, and we see that here in the Kansas City area, they provide the training so I can get ready to take a test to be certified.
That is correct.
And who does that certification?
The certification is CCHI and it's National Board, and I can provide information for you can post it.
Okay. So if I were ever to call myself a certified interpreter, it's because I can show everyone my CCHI certificate, and it's proof that I did it. That's the only way I can call myself a
Correct.
certified medical interpreter.
That is correct.
Courtney, I know that you're a certified court interpreter. How can I become a certified court interpreter in the state of Missouri?
It's a similar process. The state of Missouri offers a training session. It's called an orientation. They usually do it a couple times a year, and they try to do it in Jefferson City, sometimes in Kansas City, sometimes in St. Louis. And once an interpreter has gone through that orientation, then they can sit for a written exam. If they pass the written exam, they can sit for an oral exam. At that point, if they pass both of those exams, they can become a certified court interpreter. This is for the state level. There's a separate process for federal court. It's a similar process.
For that orientation, is that also a 40-hour-ish, or is that more or less? What does that look like?
When I did it, which has been several years now, and I assume it's similar, it's a weekend, so it's kind of an all-day Saturday, all-day Sunday. Not 40 hours, no, it's more like, I guess, about 16 hours.
Okay. But if I'm walking into a 16-hour orientation, it's because I know that I'm walking in with some basic knowledge of legal court system, right? I wouldn't want to just show up and pretend. I say, I know Spanish, I'm going to jump in.
To be honest, you don't really have to have too much legal knowledge ahead of time. That's really what the orientation is for. It's not language specific. So in my case, we had people there who had different language pairs. and we were learning. The idea is that you do come in already as a bilingual speaker. You already know your language. The orientation is to help you know how to use that language in the court system.
Okay. And the Missouri courts, because I know there's all sorts of different courts. There's the municipal courts, the city, the counties, etc. So what type of, this is a specific question, but what type of charges would a court, Missouri court interpreter like be working or interpreting on?
That's a good question. So the state of Missouri only pays for interpreters for criminal cases, and criminal cases could be anything from assault, sexual charges, battery, arms. There's all kinds of cases that an interpreter would work in the state courts. If there is a civil matter such as a divorce, orders of protection, interpreters are also called for those cases. However, usually it's the city who has to pay for those interpreters as opposed to the state.
Okay. So when the city or the state hires that interpreter to go interpret into that court session, who carries the liability if, let's say, I were to make a mistake as an interpreter?
And that's a good question. Also, ultimately, the interpreter carries a liability, but the state courts try to hire certified interpreters because they're following the process and they can show in the record that they've hired a certified interpreter who has been trained, who has been prepared. But there are cases, I've known cases where, for example, a court did not hire a certified interpreter, and that interpreter ended up being dismissed because they weren't qualified. And this was in Illinois. The interpreter actually ended up being sued by the other party because they were an incompetent interpreter. So, but ultimately, the liability is the interpreters.
Healthcare system?
The liability falls into the doctor. The doctor needs to be sure that the interpreter know this specific is being trained, but in healthcare, the liability relies into a doctor for one simple reason. On the legal matters, is a different set of tone for the interpreters. In healthcare, the relationship between you and the patient is non-existent, right? And legal, whatever you said, it goes into a legal record. It creates a heavy toll. But in healthcare, you are the voice only. You're the voice of the doctor and the client, right? Should happen the same on legal, but the legality of things. At the end of the day, the doctor signs off into that client to make sure it was dismissed with appropriate instructions, with appropriate medicine. Needs to check back with the patient or the kiddo that is in the hospital or the surgery, and the interpreter just that serves there as the voice for both parties.
Can I point out something real quick? I just want to point out that the court interpreter exam is super, super way harder than the medical one.
That's correct.
Did you hear that, Courtney, that it's a lot
Way-
harder?
And I'll tell you because I took it and I failed it.
Yes.
And so
Thank you for saying that.
so when you if you're not familiar with that, because I used to be a police officer, and I think I only passed the written portion because I was a police officer because it was hard. And then I went into the written test, and I didn't have anybody telling me how hard it was. And I went in there like, I got this, and I didn't get it at all, right? But it was, you really have to be on point with your bilingual skills and speaking it and understanding it and comprehending it, as opposed to medical interpretation where there's a lot less emotion involved. So just to point that out, it's really, really hard. And I'm not saying that the medical one isn't, but I could pass the medical one. I think we all could pass the medical one, but I don't think we all could pass the court interpreter one.
Thoughts on medical exam?
I agree at a certain point. Legal carries a more technical, high register bilingual skill. Legal also requires high technical terminology. However, in legal, you don't have room to change. Whatever the people says, you need to find those words in legal terms because that goes on record. In healthcare, you got some wiggle room to clarify with the patient or with the doctor and to change the way the register is spoken. That's required because most of the families won't understand some of the high register medical terminology. So the interpreter has a tool to can use to clarify with doctor and patients to change the message so you can interpret correctly. But in legal, once the judge says that, the interpreter can say, "Can I clarify?" No, the judge will say no. I mean, this is what it is. This is the words they use, very highly technical, and the interpreter needs to be on point so they don't waste the time of the lawyers or the judges and on that specific time slot. Period.
All right, next question. In our Facebook group, we took a small poll of the hiring practices for bilinguals. It's typical that there is some kind of bilingual or oral exam or interview, but we found that bilingual written exams are very rare. Is it true that if someone is hired as a bilingual employee, they should know how to translate written documents? Christy.
It depends on the position and the field. Definitely. So I know we've shared in our conversations that a lot of times if your bilingualism is just seen as an additional skill that you can in the moment help a client, help a customer, do a quick interpreting session between two people or just translate something quickly. A lot of times there's no one really assessing your level or your knowledge of that second language or maybe your first language. In my experience and in the setting and the world that I live in right now, which is corporate, I can tell you that the place I work for, we do, and as a hiring manager, it is a very extensive process as far as how we really make sure that those bilingual skills and those bilingual attributes that that person is, attesting to be very proficient at, we make sure we have a very in-depth understanding of what their skill set is really like. So in my arena, there is obviously an oral, several actually, interviews, whether it's initially by phone, and then we bring in to have an in-person interview. But there is extensive writing work. There's also translation, and I will talk a little bit about transcreation, which is really what we do in marketing, communications, anything that touches creative fields. It is transcreation, it is not translation, and that's maybe a new term for some of you. It's not a term made up by me, it's actually a marketing term. They might be very familiar with it. But I can tell you that as a person that hires bilinguals, bilingual professionals, the process that I go through is pretty extensive. We might have 60 applicants that have incredible experience as far as job goes and where they've been and where they've contributed, but that does not carry enough weight when we're hiring for someone that can actually create new content, reach new consumer segments specific to Latinx demographics in the United States. So for us, it's very, very serious and very extensive. A lot of new writing, a lot of product solutions. We do lots of original communications. We provide the problem in English and we say you need to solve this in Spanish. And there's a panel of people that go through the analysis of what's been provided. So it's different in every field.
I'm getting nervous already.
I know, yeah, I felt it. How does a translation, so as a bilingual employee, so thank you, that comes from a specific editorial,
Yes.
art, creative,
Yeah.
marketing, communications. How about on the healthcare side?
No. No. And I will dare to say, not for any other system. The oral rendition is completely different than the written rendition. What happened is the word bilingual is being diluted in America. And some of our countries, like Mexico and other Hispanic Latino countries, when we talk about bilingual, we usually mean we can speak, write, and read. And in America, it's a synonym. Like we say bilingual, and they expect you to translate, and they think that you can read Spanish as well. And that's not the case, especially for second, third, and fourth generation Hispanic Latinos. that they can read at a third level grade or fifth grade level. For those that are first generation, this is easier for us because we are educated and got the grammar and the reading in our countries, and we have the advantage for the first and second generation Hispanic. That's why in your resume you should put first generation, second generation Hispanic, so we can start educating the system about the differences of different Spanish and different levels. That's what I asked in my interview. Are you first generation, second generation? If they don't know, as we speak, and I know where they're coming from, if they were brought here, if they were born here, if they went to school here, I can tell exactly what generations they are, and that tells me a lot of where that Spanish on the reading and reading skills should be, right? Because yes, some work will require you to write and translate some things, but that's why we have horrible translations in the community, right? Because you've been put in the hotspot because employers don't know no better, right?
So you're stating that putting native speaker is not good enough on the resume? Because that's what I've put before. Like, I know when I was first, like, fresh out of college, I was like fluent in Spanish and English or bilingual, but I started changing it to native speaker. But I like that point that you made of first generation versus second or third.
Yes, and translations has a different track of education. It's already established. It's a career. So if you're translating, you could be very good and not have a certificate of being translator from any educational entity. But we have a track, and for the most part, again, the demand is not helping standardize the business, right? And that's why we have so many translators going into solo doing their own businesses because they can charge. Nobody is regulating that, right? You just get your LLC and voila, you're a translator all of a sudden, right? But because you come from don't get me wrong. There's very first generation good translators because they have a background from the country they're coming from, right? And they can really well. They've been educated. They finish universities, and they have PhD and masters on their country of origin, and they have a real handle of the terminology here, and they can be good translators. But in America, it's a track for that, right? And what we say in our community, papelito habla. The more certificates, especially for you guys and young guys, that they want to do the easy way. It's not an easy way to do this, and that's why that's why the market is so fluctuates a lot, right? And that we need to get a grip of that and tell our kiddos, you need to go to school to do that. You need to take class of grammar. Speaking Spanish at home don't make you an interpreter nor a translator. Sorry.
Thank you. No, I love that. And I want to say this real quickly. Make sure that we're always using, and we didn't mention this before, interpreter is speaking, translation is writing. Okay. Mary?
I was just gonna say, it's kind of a slippery slope, but sometimes, when you are the employee, to a point, they expect you to translate everything, 2-for-1 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility too, to tell our employer when you know that you're doing a disservice, because I worked at an agency that wanted me to translate all this medical terminology.
Yeah.
And that is a very specialized thing. And I would say, I don't feel that this is the right thing for us to do because I am not a medical translator. And they couldn't get it through their head that that was a thing, and I found a translation company that specialized in that, and we went that route. But for a long time, it was more like, you're just trying to be difficult.
Right.
You're not being difficult. You
Right.
know what you can do and what is right and what is wrong. And so that kind of falls on us. It's difficult, but that's part of our integrity, right? As a person, like, I can translate some minor things for you for free, right? But when it comes to serious translation, you have to hire the specialist.
So, Courtney, I'm going to jump to you on the legal side because I want to hope that interpreters in a court system are not as easily asked to say, hey, can you write this for me?
Good question. Actually, it happens more than you would maybe expect. So two things. Number one, as an interpreter, whether in the healthcare system or the legal system, oftentimes you will be asked to do a site translation, which is, look at this affidavit, look at this charging document, look at these doctor's orders, and tell the patient what it says. So site translation is a skill that you can expect to have to use it as an interpreter. In the legal setting, I get asked to translate documents by attorneys when they want to send a document to their client, and it's not something I have to do. It's not something I have to do right there in the moment in the courtroom. I could say no if I would like to, but usually if I have time, I'll accept it and I'll go home and work on it and then email it to them because I feel prepared to do that. I'm sure there are interpreters who don't. In fact, I have a colleague who sends me her translations because she personally does not want to do them or doesn't feel competent to do them. So it's not required, but the site translation is, which is being able to look at a document and essentially give the meaning to the non-English speaker.
Christy, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the extensive vetting process that you have for hiring an employee. So thank you for sharing that. I want to check in with Pepe. Or is there any other additional type of exams or testing that you've seen for checking proficiency?
Yes. So there are just proficiencies, and I used to be a medical interpreter too, so I know what those exams look like. I was a Truman interpreter actually, and there was a pretty serious, exam on terminology that was not. I don't think anyone in the room can just take the assessment and pass it really right now, especially when it's a very specific terminology. But there are assessments like that. There are grammatical assessments, and there are also context and situational. But those really depend on the company that's hiring you or the organization because they're very specific to the field that they, practice in. So.
And that would be, I would say, almost for an interpreter, right? So as an interpreter, they're checking for this type of terminology?
Yes, and as a translator, what happens is that if you have a history of being a translator, people want to see it. It should be part of your portfolio. So you should show, and this I have done, and I have provided portfolios to companies where I am showing the original piece that I'm translating from, and then I show my work. And so they can actually see how the translation, how the body of work came about. So there's that, showing your portfolio, your work.
Pepe, if we are not being hired, because there is, in the healthcare system, there are a lot of roles for bilinguals that are not interpreters or translators. Front desk, receptionist, scheduling, medical assistant. In the healthcare system, what type of proficiency exams have you seen for a bilingual? Not an interpreter, not a translator, but I say I speak Spanish and English and I want a job in all these different levels of healthcare. What type of proficiency exams have you seen or not seen?
I haven't seen much. However, it's progressing surprisingly fast. Employers are catching up, and this is due for liability reasons. People are suing organizations because they're horrible interpreters. And the thing is that organizations doesn't make that difference. They really rarely know what is the difference between a bilingual and an interpreter. Okay, they're trying to figure that out. Or communities don't know the difference. Okay, the first question when I used to be an interpreter was like, "How much you make?" Oh, it's nice to make that for speak Spanish. Yeah, okay. It's more complex than that, right?
It's not just about speaking the language.
Yeah.
That's a given. Yeah.
So no, I have seen very few assessments. However, there are organizations that they do that for you. And for example, I have found when I visit some organizations I work with in DEI, and they show me the language access, and I says, who is in charge of making sure that when you hire a bilingual, the bilingual has enough skill set? And they show me this other bilingual. And can you show me your documentation that how you assess these individuals? And they show me the test, and I check it, and it could be some are hard, some are lax, but then I say, who validates this? And then it says, employee or bilingual staff. And it says it's not a validated tool. And this, the business is growing so much that we have validating tools already in the market. It's just we need to the bilingual need to funnel it to them because it's better that a third party evaluate the bilingual skills for you employee so you have record.
Yes.
Okay, you have record of that. One I recommend for here is Alta. Alta is the one you use one of my one of my employers for a long time. With we decide that bilingual could not be interpreters in many areas of the hospital, like you said, but they can be qualified to speak Spanish in a safe manner. You have to, even if you're bilingual, you have to have certain set of skills to speak to the patient. And those that are monolingual around you, let's say the doctor you're going to work with, and you're the uh, uh, I don't know, front desk individual. The doctor needs to be sure that when you speak to the clients, that you have enough
Yeah.
skill set to speak to those, So you're just encouraged, And that includes cultural competency, basic lingual skills, and other skill set that you need to have to prove that you're a truly bilingual employee. And I recommend all that.
So, yes, there are some agencies that check for proficiency. Yes, some have some third parties. Yes, some have some extensive court system, your system where you're at. But you also mentioned that there is not always happening, right?
No,
So, if it's not always happening, checking for language proficiency, shouldn't I be happy that I got the job anyway?
yeah, probably you will be happy to get the job. The thing is, when the time comes to terms, like my friend here mentioned, and they go says, "Hey, great! Can you translate this document for us?" It's going to be very hard to describe it. And what happens, you're doing the disservice not only to your community but to yourself, and in some way you're lying to the organization that they hired for you, and you were lucky enough to answer the test that they put there, but you're really not equipped. That's why I say when you put in your resume, that's why I came here, because I really believe the resume tells a story as far as that skill set. I'm first generation, second generation. I have this experience. This is my portfolio. This is how much I know. To fit the job that you want to do, so you can do better. I'm not saying that you can improve, but you need to understand your limitations. My kids needs to know their limitations, and if they're gonna head toward a bilingual job, or a dual role job, where I do some things, but I need to use my Spanish, sometimes in interpreting or greeting clients or whatever. You need to have some type of a class, or something that takes you not only the ethics of what you do, but the ethics to be a translator or an interpreter.
It's gonna come hunt you anyway if you're just faking it till you make it. I mean,
Mhm.
it is gonna come back. We're living in a very competitive landscape for bilinguals right now, and you mentioned this earlier, and you did too. I have come across, and with my agency and with my other work that I do, people that send me like, "Oh, we just made an update to this. Can you just prove it for me? I think you translated it before." And I look at the translated document, and I'm like, first of all, this is very poorly translated. I don't know who did that translation. I don't know what the source was. But I'm already coming to them saying, it's gonna cost you more money for me to revise it than work from the original. So if you're one of those, and I hope none of the people in the room are, who are just faking it, it's gonna come bite you back. And other things that I've seen are people that are not certified, or they're not really competent, but I see this in the work that I do. Oh, we have a designer, and she's from Miami, and she's bilingual, and she created this visual merchandising sign for us. And I see it once it's been out to market, and I'm like, did they use Google Translate for this? Because it makes absolutely no sense. And it came back to that person, and the learning for there is for the person that was directing the project, or the person who handed out the translation, whatever the job was, because they did not verify that the person that they handed the work to was actually, had the skill set, had the level, was competent in what they were asked to do. So I would not fake it till you make it. It's a very dangerous thing to do. And there's tons of people that are, like Pepe said, actually certified, actually have the work experience. and the level to do the job. So just keep coming to these sessions, keep getting prepared, take the assessments, keep pursuing. We're, lifelong learners. Nobody here is done ever. So I would definitely encourage people, if this is the field that you're interested in, if being bilingual is a skill set that you really want to leverage as you're seeking your opportunities, you have to make sure that you are competent in it. So yeah.
And and I'll add, I agree with everything, and I would add one more piece. Kansas City's small. Word gets around.
Yeah.
If you end up doing some written or some oral work that is poor, because the way you said that, I would not want someone to look at my work and say, whoa, Celia, that's poor. We're a small town.
Yeah.
Words get around. People know how good or not good our work is. So yeah, don't fake it.
Yeah. Don't.
Courtney, I want to learn a little bit more about conference interpreting. Have any of you all, I'll ask here in the room, have any of you ever seen videos online of conference interpreters? Oh, it's crazy. But I'm excited. If you can just give us, and there's no real question behind this, but I want us to start exposing ourselves to different opportunities. Because it isn't always, medical or legal or the areas that we're used to. What if that could be us in one of those spaces in conference interpreting? So can you tell us a little bit about what conference interpreting is, how you prepare for it, and I'm also interested to see how they check for your accuracy.
Sure. It's an exciting field. It's one that I had never even considered before, but once I became a court interpreter, one of the skills that you learn and you have to be able to do is simultaneous interpreting. And so conferences, when they need an interpreter, they look for people who have experience doing simultaneous interpretation, which is why oftentimes they look for court certified interpreters. It is, I love it because every time I go to a conference, which is not a lot, in St. Louis there aren't that many that come through that need interpreters, but it's like a whole new vocabulary, and so I usually can get some materials ahead of time and prepare a glossary or whatever I need for the conference. The way they verify my qualifications, I send a resume. They see what my certifications are, what my experience is. I have references listed on my resume. They may call those people. I would say the majority of the conferences where I have interpreted, at some point, a bilingual person who is on staff will listen in and make sure, that I'm doing a good job, so they know to hire me in the future or to not hire me in the future. So that's kind of how it works.
What type of topics of conferences have you covered?
Different ones. LAMP has done one in St. Louis, or they have sent me to conferences for labor unions, like ASME. I've done multi-level marketing companies, kind of like the pyramid companies where people sort of have their own business and then they get people in on their business. There's vitamin companies, there's beauty products, things like that. They'll do their conferences sometimes in St. Louis and they need interpreters. Trying to think what else.
Last question.
Yes.
What is it? Can you describe how you would do it at a conference?
Yes. So basically there's a booth. There's a booth. The ideal situation is an actual booth with a headset, and you have the audio feed directly from the presenter, from their microphone. And I would have my headset on and my microphone. And it may sound difficult, but once you learn how to do it, you can kind of pick it up. And it's not, if I were to be in a room of people talking and I was supposed to just simultaneously interpret what someone was saying, it would be very difficult. But when you have the audio feed in your ear, it's much easier to do. And then you're just interpreting what you hear.
Kind of like what you see in movies with the UN. Right?
Kind of like movies with the UN is what we heard?
Yes.
We're here in the room? Yes. Okay.
I've done simultaneous interpreting a few years ago, and it was very, very intense because I wasn't in the booth. I was actually sitting right next to the person. I had
Whispering
two
in their
people.
ear.
Yep, whispering in their ear. That's exactly what it was. And it was I think it was about 3 or 4 days, but it was 8 hours a day. It was an 8 hours a day.
Memory retention. I mean,
Oh
there's
my
skills. I
gosh.
mean, we won't
And
get too
there's
much of that, but
training
there's
too.
all of these
And there is
trainings.
a track too.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions, because I don't want to go too much over the time that we had allotted here for the panel. And so, moving on just a little bit, Christy, one, wrote it here so I wouldn't forget, but I'm very happy to see you at Hallmark.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
and I know that we have someone here in the room that has mentioned art and language. So I'd love seeing how art, language, and relationships
Yes,
are connected in your work.
yes.
With this type of work, it's not just about the words that are translated, and you mentioned transcreation, so we can look that up later, but the culture that's connected to the language. How do you work on building a true, authentic understanding of more than one culture, but then also why should we build an understanding of different cultures?
Yes, and I love that I'm sharing this table here with Pepe because that actually happens a lot of medical interpretation too. There's a lot of cultural competency, there's a lot of advocacy work that you have to do when you're there. That's the way I see it as well. In the world that I'm in, when you look at communications, when you look at marketing, when you look at any creative or product development, whatever the products are, it might be soap, it might be communications, it might be entertainment. It's not just about language. It really is about tone and register. It's about cultures. It's about what's meaningful to the audience that you have or to the client that you have. So you really have to do a lot of research. For example, in the world that I'm in, we do a lot of consumer research. We do a lot of data analysis and statistics. We actually pull a lot of reports and work with agencies that are doing the research for us. What do people gravitate to? What are people buying? What are people consuming on social media? Part of what my team does is a lot of, we call it social listening. So we're doing active research on social media platforms. What are Latinos sharing? What kind of memes are they sharing? What kind of humor? What political issues are they reacting to and how? Who are they sharing it? Are they sharing it just with their family? Are they sharing it with their collaborators at work? So it's really about behavior. It's really about understanding values, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's cultural. We do a lot of studies also on retroacculturation. And this is something that we're seeing a lot in, not just in millennials, but in Generation C, where second, third generation bilinguals, or maybe they speak more, are really trying to trace back their roots and really dig in and understand, because now more than ever people want to understand where they came from and their roots, right? We have this charge to really have a strong sense of identity, and when it's about your cultural identity, people are really going back, and this is for younger, and we have a lot of young people in the room too. They're really proud of their heritage, and they're going back and relearning, right? So I see a lot of, for example, I do a lot of family advocacy at schools. I see your second, third generation Latinos that didn't really grew up speaking Spanish because their parents wanted them to acculturate and assimilate immediately. So they took the Spanish language from them just so that they would, blend in immediately. And those are the people that are going back to school, learning Spanish, teaching their children Spanish, because they see it not only as a skill or as an asset or as a tool, but they see it as something that is part of their identity that got lost in the way. So we do a lot of those studies to understand why are people so interested, and it has much more to do with just being a language. We know, and Pepe can attest to this, that speaking more than one language is not just a skill set of languages, but it's your cognitive skills grow, your problem-solving skills. Everybody here in the room has better problem-solving skills than monolinguals. I can just tell you that.
Yep.
It's the way our brains are wired.
A scientific fact.
It is, yes, there's a lot of research behind it. So it's not just about language. It's just we have so much more potential to develop cognitively and much more to give than individuals who are monolingual. And we really have to take that opportunity to pursue those strengths and really, really exercise those muscles that are there. They're just kind of dormant.
You mentioned that word, it was retro what?
Retroacculturation.
Is that something else we can also look up?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to close up with just two more questions. But one, okay, so I once heard a freelance interpreter say, I don't need to volunteer anymore. I already did my time. I also heard from a bilingual that wants to be an interpreter, but they didn't want to volunteer because they were afraid they would mess up. So I use the word interpreter freely because we know bilinguals are pulled into different capacities. But should bilinguals, interpreters, translators, like those here in the room, volunteer their time or their language skills? Why or why not? Pepe.
Yes, yes, and yes. Um, I'll answer it three ways real quick. Those that are already in the business should volunteer because our community get into more mentorship and professional development like this venue. Our community are not wired to do that. Why? Because in our countries are very competitive and we're not being told to do that. And that comes to our families and we come here and then we compete with our own community. We are famous not helping each other. Okay, so we should do that. Those that are in the business is it's a benefit on IRS. If you're in the business and you provide your own LLC and you provide your own taxes, that can be a write-off. Okay, so it's plenty of benefits, and you're helping the community. Okay, part of the program that I do is says you like to work with people. You know, and if you're not going to work with people or you're shy, how you can want to become an interpreter? Or any bilingual thing, you need to treat people, and the people deserve or almost quality as an individual, right? And the other question is, organizations don't know how to set up a volunteer structure. You know, many organizations come in. Oh, we have volunteer interpreters, and then when I says, who's shadowing them? What are they doing? The logistics. Where are they coming from? Who handles the calendar? Who are making sure and showing now and then that they're doing the right work and showing up on time? To have a structure, they also can be write off from IRS if you're a nonprofit, but you need to have those structures. If you don't have the capacity to do it, and they just say, just come in, we need help. Well, you're gonna get what you're gonna get. You know, low, poor quality, unregulated, unchecked individuals, bilinguals that are trying to do better. But somebody in the TJ can have a mentorship, shadowing of that. That takes time to put together. But I hope I answered both sides. But you should volunteer, and if you're gonna mess up, that's why you need to have a structure. If you're at that level that says I don't know if I'm gonna do a good job, you self-assess that. You know, when they graduate from my class, I tell them you might graduate from the class because it's easy to pass a class and a written exam. The real test is outside in the world when you're really actually speaking with the people and you're using the terminology as you should, right? And understand the ethical principles of this profession, right? Doesn't matter which profession, legal, if you know the ethical principles of this, the more people get fired from this business, legal, this business, not because they don't know the language, it's because ethical principles. They do something they shouldn't be doing. Not because they didn't know the language or they were not know how to understand it, right? They can improvise. We can improvise. We're very resilient, but they got fired or they got dismissed because ethical principles. They don't know how to behave. And that's why I love that you're doing this for them as building their risk.
I will build on yes, yes, and yes. Love that. Love what you covered. But I also have other points. One, and I was looking at your sample resume up there, that it's actually yours, and you have listed, and this is what I do on mine too, and LinkedIn as well, listed all of the non-paid work.
Yeah.
All of it. Because, and as a person that sits in panels and sits in,
Boards
and
meetings.
sits in boards and meetings, but also in, I'm also, not all the time I'm the person that's hiring the individual, but I sit in a committee that is looking at the person that is wanting the job, a reviewer. When you can see the person through their resume or through an interview outside of the job that they're applying for, it tells you how well-rounded that person is, how resourceful that person is, What more do they have to offer? What is their opportunity to have a growth in their career path? Because I, as a hiring manager, I'm not just hiring you to do the job right now. I'm hiring a person that I can see can have a future and can move up the ladder. So if I can see those things on your resume, if I can see that you're involved in volunteering and providing, doing pro bono work or providing services at a discount for a certain organization, that is going to speak volumes to me about your integrity, about what you're passionate about what your interests are, and about how enthusiastic and ambitious you are in growing in the career or the profession that you're in.
Agreed.
And the last thing that I will say is that I have extensive volunteering service because I always say yes and I need to learn how to say no here and there. But it has provided me a network of just incredible resources, right?
That's
When you do
usual,
work.
right?
So when you are a person that is seen as someone that is resourceful, that has a very wide network of contacts in a lot of different fields, you are seen as the gold nugget, right? That employer can just kind of, go at and polish and shape and grow as a leader. So volunteering shows leadership skills, and hiring managers are looking for leadership skills. They're not hiring people as far as like, can you do the job now? Is can you do this job and the next and the next and the next? And volunteering provides that. It provides experience. It provides you with different perspectives and points of view. It provides you with the tools you need to grow in your leadership and to make leaders of your own, right? To have your own disciples, sort of thing. And it makes you a very resourceful person that people see the value in that. So yes, volunteering is very important. Oh, the last thing I want to say is that I wanted to touch on your point about non-native speakers becoming interpreters and becoming translators. And they're excelling at it, and they start by volunteering. So, and I know a lot of those people in our area who are, English dominant, who grew up with English only, and then they made it as part of their profession. They became bilinguals.
Skying higher sometimes than the men.
Yes, and they're the ones who become, the managers at the agencies or the healthcare providers.
Yep.
So definitely, and they start by volunteering.
Yep.
Because you have to collect the hours, right? If you're new in interpreting or in translating and you're applying for an entry-level position, they're going to ask for experience already. And so the way to acquire that experience and those hours is through volunteering. So definitely include all of those things, even if it's volunteering at your kids' preschool parent committee, which that's how I met you. Put that on your resume because it speaks volumes. It speaks to who you are as a person and not just as a person who has a certain skill set.
Courtney, I want to make sure I get from your legal side in court interpreting. That again, the question is, what if I mess up? And that's a completely different setting.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, thoughts on volunteering? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. It's a good place where you can build your confidence, build your skill set, and I think we're most fulfilled in our lives when we're serving other people.
Cool, thank you. So I'm going to finish up with one question that I didn't share with you all. This entire workshop is being held in English. Okay? But I never want to exclude those that are because all of us here are speaking Spanish. I don't think we got any other languages. Es que todos, y usted también aquí, Courtney, usted habla español, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Sí, ok, entonces bueno. Entonces lo que sigue aquí es en español.
Muy bien.
Todo este taller se hizo en inglés para darle la oportunidad a otros idiomas también. Pero entonces ya viendo los que estamos aquí presentes y lo que sabemos, que es la mayoría aquí en la ciudad de Kansas City, Missouri.
Claro.
Es la mayoría. Entonces no quiero excluir a las personas quienes dominan de una manera, no que sea una grosería, pero de una manera excelente el español. Y ahora nosotros tal vez somos los que quedamos en segundo plano. Entonces, para los que manejan perfectamente el español y son los nativos, primera generación, etcétera, como lo mencionó Pepe, ¿qué recomendaciones pueden dar ustedes para los que dominan el español, pero también están aprendiendo el inglés? Y también son bilingües, igual que cualquiera de nosotros que estamos aquí. ¿Algún consejo que quieran dar en español para los que estén practicando o que estén dominando el inglés también? En cuanto a este papel como bilingüe, en todas las capacidades y todos tipos de trabajo, ¿hay alguna recomendación o algo que quieran compartir con aquellas personas? Pepe.
Sí se puede. I will- Voy a recomendar lo siguiente porque Estados Unidos, la cara de Estados Unidos está cambiando. Así lo acepten quien lo quiera aceptar. Obviamente la población hispana es una de las más grandes. En 20 años todas las minorías van a ser mayoría en Estados Unidos. Va a cambiar completamente la cara en todos los sistemas que existen en Estados Unidos. El healthcare, el médico, el social, el de compras, el de teléfonos, todo. Incluyendo Hallmark, que está haciendo trabajo ahorita porque sabe que los hispanos es un gran parte del dinero que ellos van a proveer para este tipo de servicios. Sean listos, muchachos. Los tiempos están cambiando. Así oigan lo que oigan en este tiempo de parte del gobierno, por eso lo están haciendo. ¿Ok? Necesitamos ir a la escuela, necesitamos graduarnos y jugar el papel que ellos quieren que juguemos. Necesitamos poner a más mujeres en posiciones de liderazgo, especialmente mujeres latinas, hispanas. ¿Ok? Lo que yo pueda hacer como primera generación, por eso que yo me salí para hacer este trabajo con ustedes, porque puedo ver a mis hijos lidiando o siendo el líder en esta nación, ¿ok? Para que puedan tener un mejor futuro, ¿ok? Que no quede en la comunidad hispana donde está ahorita. Pero no se puede hacer sin ayuda de más hispanos. Trabajo número 1, tenemos que juntar nuestras experiencias y nuestras habilidades para mejorar una comunidad entera que viene de muchas partes, ¿ok? No nada más de México, viene de Costa Rica, de Cuba, Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Guatemala. Todos somos hermanos. Y este mensaje se lo dedico a todos ellos que pueden hacer esto y más. No se queden atrás, busquen oportunidades y busquen la ayuda de nosotros mismos los hispanos.
Gracias. Courtney, ¿algo que quiera compartir usted?
Solamente que practiquen la pronunciación, practiquen el vocabulario. Hay muchísimos recursos en las bibliotecas, en línea, si quieren estudiar para estos exámenes, para obtener algún tipo de título. Es cuestión de practicar y sobre todo la parte de la pronunciación.
Yo voy a responder más con los tips, para las personas cuyo idioma es el español y que el segundo idioma es el inglés. Uno es ampliar el círculo social. Y la manera de tener una mejor pronunciación y la manera de tener una mejor manera de expresarse en su segundo idioma es ampliando su círculo social, no nada más teniendo sus fiestas, sus reuniones, sus actividades sociales con gente que habla español, porque entonces van a limitar muchísimo su expresión, su comunicación corporal, su tono, que son las únicas, los atributos que uno adquiere al tener un contacto social. Entonces, definitivamente hay que expandir nuestro círculo social, nuestras interacciones cara a cara, porque esa es la mejor manera de aprender a conversar, de aprender a refinar un segundo idioma como apropiado, como tener buena pronunciación, etc. Entonces ese es mi tip número 1, es ampliar el círculo social y no nada más cotorrear, pasarla bien con gente que habla español, ¿no? Segunda es el entretenimiento. Los latinos somos muy dados a acudir a nuestro entretenimiento en español, ¿no? Entonces, definitivamente como un tip, si quieren, si están aprendiendo el inglés como un segundo idioma o quieren desarrollarlo, definitivamente consumir entretenimiento, media, cosas así en el idioma al cual quieren perfeccionar, entonces en inglés. Y la tercera, no podemos decirlo, hacer más hincapié en el hecho de que prepararse académicamente es definitivamente clave y número uno, porque pensamos que todavía porque Kansas City o el estado de Missouri es donde no tenemos tanto auge en crecimiento de idiomas, de gente bilingüe o trilingüe, etcétera. Pensamos que todavía no hay suficiente, que el mercado para nosotros, que las oportunidades todavía están ahí a pedir de boca, y no es cierto.
No.
Tenemos gente de todos lados, y estaba hablando creo que contigo hace rato, de que está habiendo un boom impresionante en nuestra sociedad aquí local. Y viene gente de todos lados que viene a poblar, a crecer sus negocios, muchísimos emprendedores aquí. Entonces, vamos a crecer más en la competitividad porque la gente del este y la gente del otro lado, estemos pensando en Nueva York, Florida, California, todos los estados donde hay mucha más gente bilingüe, se están mudando aquí. Y esas van a ser las personas con las cuales nosotros vamos a competir. Entonces, no se queden atrás, definitivamente busquen oportunidades como las que ofrece Pepe con su consultoría. Hay programas aquí en MCC, hay programas en JCCC, hay maestros particulares que están capacitados para ayudar, no se queden atrás. Y un sinfín de acceso a programas en línea también. Entonces, definitivamente el punto académico, el punto de preparación formal, es sumamente importante. Entonces, no nada más porque hablo español o porque hablo francés o porque soy native speaker, quiere decir que ya estamos calificados. Eso no es garantía de que podemos ser exitosos en prestar servicios de idioma.
Pues aquí es un ejemplo súper inesperado, porque fue de última hora, pero me ha tocado también en reuniones por parte del trabajo, que nos reunimos, vamos a hablar de Medicaid y de Healthcare. Y de repente resulta que todos ya hablamos español y dicen, ay, ¿qué les parece si seguimos en español? Entonces, el no faking it, ¿verdad?
Exactamente.
¿Qué tal si uno estuviera en una reunión como esa y que todos dijeran, wow, todos aquí hablamos español, vamos a seguirle? Y vamos a hacer no sé, la planeación de algún evento, de no sé qué. Ahora now I speak Spanish. Que sí llega a suceder. Okay. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you guys. So can we please give an applause?
Gracias.
Gracias.
Ok, bueno, me desconecto y hablamos pronto.
Perfecto. Celia, le iba a decir, feel free to share my contact information if anyone wants more information about the process for becoming a legal or conference interpreter. I'd be happy to respond to emails or phone calls.
I have a
Yes,
question.
we have one more question. Easy. No, I'll repeat it.
I don't know if it was already being asked, but on things like the test for medical or court, do they expire, like if you are getting a type of certification where you have to renew, and for how long is it?
So, le voy a preguntar primero aquí. I'll ask Courtney first, so that way we can disconnect. But the question is, how long does your court certification or your court interpreter certification last?
In the state of Missouri, there's not an expiration date. However, I am required to do continuing education,
That's right.
which is 8 hours every year. If I don't do those, like training or preparation in some way, then I would go on a non-active list.
Okay. Pepe?
The same. The same. For this particular introduction, there's no expiration, and you can pretty much start working because of demand. But for the national certification, it's the same. Sometimes you need, some continuing education credit hours.
And Christy? Arts and marketing, there is no certification.
Your portfolio is what's telling you. So if you're showing me in your portfolio a translation you did 7 years ago, I want to see what you're doing right now. So, it's not necessarily an expiration, but you have to stay current. Yeah.
Awesome. So I don't want to keep our speakers or our panelists here any longer than what they've committed to, but if you can stick around, you're more than welcome to stick around and you guys can ask some questions. But thank you very much, Courtney. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect, and I will be sure to share your contact information for those interested in learning more about conference interpreting or court and legal through the state of Missouri.